explaining the application that we submitted, seeking an exemption, and discuss the 7 criteria points that were in the application. So we had talked about the location of our building, the proximity to the fire station, providing immediate response time, the adequate room for firefighting access, and there's a fire hydrant located across the street, the building that's surrounded by a parking lot to the south, to the east, to the west, and North Avenue to the north, posing very low risk of impact to adjacent buildings in the event of a fire. The fact that we've not had a change in use or undergone a significant remodel that would trigger a sprinkler system to be installed, and then the very minimum egress distance from the furthest bedroom in the unit to the front door, which is significantly less than the maximum of 200 feet. I also talked about that each unit has its own front swinging door and sliding back door, plus there's egress windows in each bedroom. There's no common areas in our buildings that one would have to go through or escape through to get outside of the units, and that these units are staggered, and the small portion that is connected to one another has 2 layers of fire-rated drywall that was built to code requirements. Again, all these units are fully finished and occupied, and retrofitting would require displacing the occupants, explain the hardships, both financially and operationally, to manage this type of project. And so last month, we had a great discussion. We didn't have a full committee, but the majority of the members at that time were in favor of an exemption, and then a discussion followed regarding an alarm system. So, Member Dahlman, you had asked me to talk to an alarm company. I spoke to 2 local companies, both Keith Security and Bulldog Security, and what they proposed was a system. Well, they both explained that because there's no common areas in our building, we would have to have 6 separate systems. So there'd be a panel in each unit. Those detectors that they put in would be all wirelessly connected. And so if a detector goes off, it notifies the monitoring station. They call the person living there to determine if it's a false alarm or not. If they call and nobody answers, then they dispatch. But I brought spec sheets that, this is from Bulldog. They sent a very detailed information regarding the panel that they would install, and then the detector. So they recommended 1 on each level, then 1 on each bedroom, if an alarm system is required.
Did anybody who wasn't here get a chance to look at last month's? You did, Ed? Yeah, did you, Ed?
I scanned it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you're not starting from
0.
basically square one.
And we do have Seth Summer, our
I
consultant
was
from
gonna ask you if
FSCI
Seth was
online.
here.
Yeah, so if you want him to give a summary of his report, I'm sure he could do a
I
brief
would like,
summary if
I would
people
like
would
to,
that.
would like Seth to do that. I think we've got it, but if you could say it, Seth, that'd be great. Not the whole thing, but just kind of where you ended up and what your recommendation would be.
Yeah, okay, I can go over the report from last time. And I'm probably gonna miss a few things. It was a month ago and I read through it, so I'll do my best to refresh everybody. And then if you guys have questions, just let me know and I'd be happy to answer those. So just to bring everybody up to speed, there's 2 buildings out there. Each of them have 3 units. They're essentially like townhouses, is how I would describe it. There's 3 units next to each other, 2-story units, no basements. Or are there basements? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yes.
There are basements. Okay. So there are, yep. So they're 2 stories above grade with basements, 3 units next to each other, and there's 2 buildings. And so the requirement, obviously, based on Lake Bluff's ordinances, is to sprinkler all multifamily dwellings. So what we went through last time was what it would take to basically retrofit a building like this, actually two buildings like this with a residential sprinkler system. There was some nuances too, because the quote that the applicant had gotten was for the type of system that's allowed for single family homes. But since these buildings are considered multifamily dwellings, it would need a different type of system, which would cost even more. It would require a new water service for the building, and they'd have to add a riser room for the sprinkler system to go into and then distribute to each of the units throughout. It would be a lot more work than was originally thought. And so we just wanted to point that out. But just going through
But
everything.
Seth, on that point, one alternative we could consider is just allowing the NFPA 13D like they got the quote for. That would be an option because they are townhomes, and even though they are originally approved under the BOCA code, which is equivalent to today's IBC, I mean, they potentially may have been, essentially met the requirements to be considered under the IRC and do a 13D system, essentially.
Yes.
So we could do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I was, thank you, Mike, for saying that. I was going to point out at the end, but that's okay. You didn't steal any thunder or anything. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so just going through it, the code itself would require sprinkler systems if these units were built today. So that's not a question. And then, as far as like practical difficulties, these are fully occupied units. If you were to retrofit these buildings with a sprinkler system, obviously you're going to have to relocate the residents within them. You're going to have to cut open walls, redo plumbing. There's going to be, a huge time that the occupants wouldn't be in their houses essentially while this work was going on. So relocation, temporary storage, just a lot of things to consider. As far as the size of these units, they're relatively small. I believe 2,600 square feet for the whole building. So you divide that by 3, they're around 900 square feet each, I think is what I remember, for each of the units. So they're relatively small units. There weren't any significant hazards outside the normal hazards that you'd have inside of a dwelling unit. So just, depending on how you guys keep your houses, that's the kind of hazards that would be in the building. We believe that there is adequate access for firefighting purposes. There's nothing blocking access around these buildings. And then as far as like egress and escapability, so all the sleeping rooms do have openable windows that can be used for escaping or rescue. They do have regular doors to go in and out of for getting out of the building. So as far as egress, there's plenty of egress from the building if something were to happen. Something that we asked last time and didn't get a complete answer on, if I remember correctly, was the buildings are supposed to have currently smoke alarms throughout each of the bedrooms, one in the hallway outside of the bedrooms, then one on each floor. Can the applicant confirm, or Mike, did you guys go out there and check to see if that stuff was in place already?
Staff has not been out there, but Brady, can you confirm what you have?
Well, I can speak, so 2 units that I have, I know they do. 100% confirm on all the units, not at this time, but if that's required, we'll certainly get it.
Yeah. So we had recommended that be a condition, if there is an exemption granted, that one of the conditions be that, staff inspect and confirm that all that's in place as a condition
I got a question.
Okay.
at that time.
Can I just interrupt for a minute? When you talk about I missed the part about what kind of a detector, what kind of an alarm system is it? Is this just a 9-volt battery that you get at Kmart or someplace, or is this something that's a little more sophisticated than that?
They are hardwired, I believe, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if they're all battery, but they are just regular smoke alarms. They are not like a fancy, detection system or anything like that. These are the ones that you would buy in a big box store. Um, and Brady, I don't know if you can tell me if they're interconnected. Like if one goes off in a bedroom, do all of the alarms go off?
Currently, no, they do not, but the
Okay.
information that I have tonight from security, Bulldog Security, is that they would be wirelessly interconnected to one another. They said it's not
Okay.
possible to have all of them, but all of them in each unit would be interconnected. But
Right,
because there's
right.
no common area, there's no way to put a
Yep.
panel,
Okay. Yeah, and I'll address that. Thank you for sharing that information that you received from the contractors. I'll address that later on. But yeah, so right now it sounds like they're just to use your terminology, the regular 9-volt smoke detectors. So, which code allows and state statute allows, um, but as one of our suggestions is, if this exemption were approved, actually regardless, there should be smoke alarms that are interconnected throughout the units. But for all intents and purposes, basically each alarm stands alone. So if there's a fire in one of the bedrooms or out in the common area, just that one alarm is going to go off until additional smoke reaches the other alarms. That's what's currently there.
but there's no common area.
Right. There's no common area. So just within each unit. So only
Right.
the occupant within the unit can hear. I mean, you might be able to hear through the wall, but I can't say for sure. So to summarize, basically there were a couple options, and one was if you being the board, don't require them to put a sprinkler system in the building, then we asked that a full fire alarm system be installed, which the applicant has gotten a couple of bids to do that, and the specifications that he was talking about from the contractor did sound like the type of system that we would be expecting. I'd have to look closer at the bid to make sure, but we can talk about more of what that system would look like as far as the code requirements go. And then to Mike's point earlier, the second option is to require a sprinkler system to be installed in each of the units. And if you remember me telling you earlier, because these are considered like a multifamily structure, the code itself would require a single water service going into a riser room with backflow protection and sprinkler piping from that room to the 3 units. And that was much more than was anticipated originally. The second option for sprinklering is to just treat them as standalone units and allow them to be served from their existing water services with the residential sprinkler system. I can't remember the exact, but that was the quote that was originally obtained for the scope of work. I can't remember if it required any type of pump or anything as part of those systems, but can the applicant speak to what the original proposal included for the sprinkler system? If you remember, I'll check too.
I think the number was $104,000. NFPA 13D, I think is what it's called.
Yes.
That's right.
And in the estimate, it outlines the work that they would do, which is basically coming in and opening up and getting their plumbing in place. And then additional work that would be required is, hiring an outside plumber for I think, check valves or whatever they put on the water lines coming into the units, electrician to come in and install the electrical components. And then, of course, putting the units back together, drywall installation, painting, millwork, all that. And then moving the furniture obviously out and occupants, having to find alternative housing while that's being done.
Right. So it looks like the fire sprinkler contractor's quote shows them connecting to an 1.5 inch water service, and I think the original plans from 1979 show a 2 inch service coming up to the center of the courtyard, and then everyone's 1 inch service branching off of that. So it looks like you would probably have to, dig up back to where that changes from 2 inch to 1 inch and bring at least 1.5 inches into each unit in order to do that, in order to install the sprinkler system. So that'd be above and beyond the 104,000 to have the plumber bring that in.
Yeah, I believe it is a 1 inch service into the units.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So essentially, as far as recommendations go, I try to stay away from giving recommendations. We're just trying to provide what the facts show. I mean, it's really what the will of the board is. I would just restate that, and some of the board members, I'm sure, especially the ones that were there last time, will state their points and their thoughts on this. But the village did put this amendment in place. Mike, this goes back to what, 2010 originally, when
2008, I think, and then 2010
yeah,
was when 2010 was when they changed the date to 2026. Yeah.
Yeah, so this ordinance has been around for quite a long time.
Actually, yeah. Actually, 2005 originally was when it first started.
Oh. Okay, so 20 years ago,
Yeah.
this amendment was in there. So I just tried to give, the evaluation of the property, what the options are, and if you guys have questions on what those options entail, I can provide some insight and some guidance as that's concerned. But ultimately, you guys have to evaluate our report, Mike's report, and the applicant's report, and determine if there's enough there to grant an exemption or not. And then if not, then what are the requirements?
Okay, thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm happy to provide this information regarding the,
Okay.
from what Bulldog provided with spec sheets.
All right, well,
Yeah, if you want, you can just pass it down and we can.
The panel that they're suggesting in each of the units, and then the detectors, that it's a 24/7 monitored system. But both Keith and Bulldog recommended very similar systems.
Art, you want to start? You got thoughts?
I just had I have one question. On page 5 of 6 of the consultant's report, they refer to an alarm system per Title 9, Chapter 2, Section 907.2. What exactly is that alarm system? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I'll speak to that, Mike, and then if you want
Okay.
to fill in anything that I miss. So basically, the intent of Lake Bluff's amendment is all unsprinkled buildings need to have a full fire alarm system, which is essentially what the applicant was talking about. So it would include a fire alarm control panel that is connected to all the devices in the unit, and then that is monitored by a central station. Like if you think of Permar or ADT, those are central stations that actually monitor that fire alarm control panel. So you've got the control panel in a unit, then you're going to have a smoke detector above that control panel. Then you're going to have another smoke detector on each level. Depending on where that fire alarm control panel is, it'll have to be a smoke detector on each level. Typically, you have a pull station. You've all seen them in commercial buildings. When you leave the building, there's that red box that you pull the little handle. That's typical of a full fire alarm system. And so that's what a full fire alarm system would look like in this unit. And in addition to this full fire alarm system, you still need the smoke detectors that are not connected to the system in each bedroom to operate as well. So
So Seth,
that's what the system is.
yeah, so the system you're talking about is typically what you'd find in a multifamily building, typically a multifamily building that has like a common area to have that type of system and all that. But townhomes, if we were to consider this townhomes, which it appears to meet the qualifications for it, even if the architect, designed it under the BOCA code. Typically, townhomes are really the same system as a single-family home, right, as far as smoke detectors. So they don't necessarily have to have the panel or a pull station or anything like that, just the smoke detectors. And we require carbon monoxide detectors too in Lake Bluff.
Yeah, that's part of the state statute as well. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. And that's something that, we wanted to point out is what was the intent of the amendment that Lake Bluff has. And obviously you probably have the best historical knowledge, but yes, you're right. If you were to say call these townhouses, then you're just talking about the regular smoke alarm system with interconnection, no fire alarm control panel, no monitoring, so that if something happens, it's just an audible alarm within the apartment. Nobody is notified, nothing like that. So if you treat it like a single family house, that could be one of the paths.
Right, so if the ABR was thinking about requiring a monitored system, that's something you could do as a condition, but that's above and beyond our code requirements. Our code doesn't require a monitored system unless that's a condition that the ABR puts on an exemption approval.
So Chapter 2, Section 907 doesn't require a monitored system.
Correct, it does not for townhomes.
Okay, it'd just be 110 volt battery backup.
Right, that's right, interconnected within the
interconnected.
unit, right.
And again, that's if you consider them townhouses.
Right, because a commercial apartment building or a multifamily apartment building with common area would have a monitored system, right, Seth? Yeah,
Yes.
right.
The monitored system you're talking about, though, is one that immediately contacts the fire department.
No, contacts a monitoring company.
I get that, but the monitoring company contacts the fire department. In other words, they don't call the homeowner and say, is there a fire in your
That is
residence?
That is what they do.
That is what they do.
I think for residential ones, they do
I understand
call the-
residential ones. I was talking about the ones that have the elaborate panel and, the pull stations and all of those things that you see in in
Right,
commercial
right.
properties. Those automatically go to the fire department.
So the commercial or multifamily, I believe the central station, when it gets the alarm, calls the fire department immediately, yeah.
And I just say that because the advantage of that is the fire department is an immediate response. There's no phone conversations trying to reach someone, that kind of thing.
Right.
There's nobody saying, well, I'll go check.
Right, yeah, right,
Okay. That's basically all I had.
yeah, okay.
The way I look at this, I see three options. And we had a company that managed condominium associations. We probably managed 3,000 condos on the North Shore suburbs. So I have a lot of experience with both sprinklers and alarm systems. But I see three options here. One is complete exemption, it just stays as it is. Number two is an exemption, but add a monitored alarm system, and I know both Keith and Bulldog, and they're both good companies, so I would accept what either one of them comes up with, but monitor to a central station. And the third option is to require a sprinkler system, which is what the code requires. So if we do an exemption for a sprinkler system, then we have the option to add the requirement of a monitored alarm system. And that's what I would be in favor of. I think of the thousands of apartments we've had, We have a couple of them that have fire sprinkler systems, and I don't remember any of them ever going off, but if they do, the water is gonna do almost as much damage as a fire could. We have had a number of times when alarms have gone off. Most of the times it's a false alarm. That's where the monitoring comes in. The monitor company, the central station, calls the homeowner or calls an alternative if they've got another phone number. They ask if there's a fire or if there's an alarm. If they don't reach anybody, they call the fire department. And so that's what I would be in favor of, is a monitored alarm system, so.
Is that done wirelessly somehow?
They're done both ways. I have, most of the ones I have are wires, but I do have some that are like what they're proposing. If you do it wirelessly, you don't have to make as many holes in the walls to pull wires through and stuff like that.
This is a wireless proposal, correct?
Yeah. And the wireless proposals work well.
And all,
Yeah, if you guys remember, Terlato has a wireless fire alarm system.
Right. Yeah, so these days they have ones with the 10-year battery, so you don't have to replace your 9-volt batteries in each detector, twice a year to do it.
Until one of the homeowners wants to do something in their house and they take the detector down to get it out of the way, and then, of course, that sets the whole thing off and calls the fire department and everything else. That's a hassle that you just have happen every once in a while.
These units are so small. I mean, if somebody sneezed in the middle of them, everybody on all 3 floors would hear it. It's just, so it's, I don't know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Ed, what do you think?
I'm in Neil's camp.
I'm not sure which camp that is. That's with the monitoring system?
Second, yeah, with a monitoring
Monitoring
system.
system.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would
Scott?
agree. I would agree. That's a position I had at the last meeting, and I think it stands, yeah.
I'm still on the sprinkler side. We had a fire in our home here in Lake Bluff, and it was in the living room at Christmas time. A greenery went up, and we were awake, but it went really quickly. It was dry, and the alarms did go off, but not until the fire department was already there. We didn't have a smoke detector in the living room, but it was, and also the fire department, I know a lot of people are like, oh, the sprinklers will do a lot of damage. The fire department and the fire did a lot of damage. So maybe that's part of it. I just feel that if people are sleeping there, that it's the safest way to go, especially, I think you mentioned there was a baby. And I know it's expensive. I think I would be splitting the cost, I'm thinking. I know there's insurance breaks if you do install the sprinklers. I'd certainly be in favor of the 13D system. On my conscience, I think it's the safest option if people are going to be sleeping. I know some people mentioned that there were people living alone there. I don't know if they're older people, I'm not sure, but tenants, and it's the code, and I think the code was voted for a reason. So, and a lot of other people have complied, so that's where I stand. I certainly would be flexible on, I know it's a disruption, maybe giving extra time to comply in case people are wanting to end leases or between leases, or giving at least people time to organize themselves. Certainly, if that doesn't happen, the sprinkler system doesn't happen, I would then be in favor of the monitored alarm. But just for me, my bottom line is sleeping. Because, we obviously got out of our house, but I'm not sure, sometimes I do think, I don't know, if we'd been asleep, I don't know. You know what I mean? So that's just my stance. It's definitely not personal.
There are people on the Zoom, so if you're on the Zoom and if you want to speak, press the button to raise your hand there. No one's raised their hand.
Nobody's raising their hand. Okay. All right, well, are we ready to make a motion on this? There's any further discussion? Anything else you want to say? Brad, anything you want to say?
Anything else?
No, I think you guys both covered it very well, and, I would, ask for your consideration for the modified proposal as suggested.
Okay. So, are we ready for a motion?
Well, yeah, so I just want to make sure that the board knows what the motion, so it sounds like, it sounds like there was there's concurrence of a wireless monitored alarm being installed, through the applicant's proposal from Bulldogs or Keith's, but I also just want to point out or just make sure that if we are voting on a motion that the staff memo included a recommendation that if the exemption is granted that the owners have staff inspect and verify every unit has a working smoke and carbon monoxide detector that meet the village's current code requirements as well. So if that also wishes to be part of the motion, that is a condition that should be included in the motion for the exemption.
That's what you said.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we grant the exemption, but add the requirement that they install a wireless monitored alarm system, plus everything else you said.
Second. Okay, do we need a second?
Okay, it sounds like Art seconded.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, roll call.
Okay. Member Wicks.
Nay.
Member Stradiff.
Aye.
Member Deegan.
Aye.
Member Dahlman.
Aye.
Member Cottrell. Aye. And Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, so motion passes 5-1 with 1 abstained. So the motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.
Not abstained, but a recuse.
Or, yeah, recused. I mean,
Abstained goes with
yeah,
the
right.
concurrence,
Go.
just for the minutes.
I'll let Matt know. Come back in.
At least as much as I was like, oh, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. I don't wanna-"
No, you said your piece, and,
If anything happens to that baby, on you.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay.
Mike decided to turn the camera on this time, so you guys could see me finally instead of this.
Mike
this
has left
voice.
the room. He and Elvis are both gone.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, do you guys need me for anything else?
I think we're good. So,
All
thanks
right,
again,
well,
Seth.
excellent.
Thank
Yep,
you.
have a great evening, everybody.
You too.
Thanks.
This code take a long time. Was us?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can only vote on what comes environment.
Right.
My bottom line is
Find it?
people are sleeping
Yep,
now.
he's on his way.
No, people aren't, fine. That's where that's where my line is. Or dogs. Did you want someone's dog to die?
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, next item is a workshop. Remember that, this is a workshop for a proposed multi-family building at 570 Evanston. For those of you who don't know, 570 Evanston is going to be right next to the Whitmer building. So, Tom, there you are.
And this is Jason Tromley.
Hi, guys.
Nathan,
How are you?
so have at it.
I was going to start off real quick. Jason Trombley, part of the ownership group for these two parcels. I live at 206 East Scranton. We originally bought these two parcels, just to give those of you some background, in 2016 with the idea of building our family dream home on the corner. And, fourth kid came, costs were rising, so it eventually, then it also became maybe it's not such a great idea to build like a big house there on the corner. It doesn't seem appropriate for the village. Talking with the neighbors that are now part of the Altunian project, we tried and we've been in front of this board and many others to try and put a larger project across the whole block, which did not pass the muster of the village board eventually. So it sat for a few years, and now we're coming back with the progress of the Altunian project on the bank parcel, and then my 2 lots is a good time to, if this is gonna happen, we're gonna develop all of this at the same time. And love this project, love what Tom's gonna do and what Tom's gonna describe to you. But what I really like about this is, in separating the Altunian project from ours, was that there's this natural transition from the structure that they have to the housing as you go east along Scranton, that Tom's done a beautiful job of kind of making that transition. That was one of the big comments that this board had, and the village had, and the PCZBA had. You guys all had that comment back 6-7 years ago, and I think Tom's done a beautiful job of making that transition happen. But basically, and I'll let him describe this, basically my heart's in this community, my family's in this community. We have 4 little kids. We're a big part of it with baseball and school fundraisers and anything and everything that we could possibly do to be good citizens of this community. We want to continue to be good citizens of this community. And I think this project that Tom is bringing forth does just that. So thank you, and I'll let Tom take it away. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jason.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Dobbins. I'm the architect for the project. I also happen to live in town at 403 Evanston. So what part of what Jason was saying is we also recognize what an important corner this is. We are actually looking forward to your comments. We're not suggesting that what we've proposed is perfect, so we actually look forward to your comments. As most of you know, we got a favorable review at the PCZBA, or we probably wouldn't be here, so we were very pleased at that. So I'll give it a go tonight. So what you see here, of course, it's the ABR presentation, but it's a workshop, as Bob said. So we will be back to see you again. But we're hoping we can get enough feedback so that when we come back to you next time, we don't have to change it again after that, is the hope. So next slide. So I realize, by the way, a vertical presentation doesn't work very good for the format here, so I'm glad to see you have it all in front of you. So this piece was the project description. It really was intended to say from the PCZBA. I'm not going to read it, but what I would like to do is give you a little background and a little historical perspective on why we're actually here. So what Jason said is absolutely true. What kind of prompted us to come today is 2 or 3-fold. The Altunian Whitmer project that's on the bank property, which you of course know about, kind of prompted us to get going on the corner. Way back when the entire block was going to be developed, and frankly, the bank building development had some impact on this corner property that made us kind of, I won't say rush, but get after trying to do something on this corner, and that was multifamily. As all of you know, the comprehensive plan supports multifamily on the entire block as long as it's transitional. Those are those words. And the comprehensive plan has seen many proposals over the last, or not the comprehensive plan, the village has seen many plans over the last 10, 12 years. This is the first time I think they've been split, and it gives us an opportunity here. You know, you can argue the bank building is not near as transitional as what we think our project is, which may be perfectly fine because we are fronting on the residential structures. The village supports multifamily. We've been in front of the PCZBA 3 times now, and I think that's pretty conclusive that they support the multifamily. The question is, what should it look like, how big it is, and so forth? Well, here we are. This is the existing conditions. You probably all know what the existing conditions are. Next slide. I do want to talk a little about what our design concept is here. So the objective, what we are trying to propose here is very different than, this is the Plata survey, of course. Why don't you run it to the rendering, and I'll talk about some of the design things. Just leave it on the rendering there.
Sure.
So what we were, I don't know who looked carefully at the plans, but the objective of this particular building, which is a 4-unit multifamily condominium project with underground parking. Didn't start with underground parking, but it's underground parking now. So the concept here was to develop what everybody wants in town, of course, which is single-family empty nester housing. Not single-family, single-level empty nester housing. Now, it would be our wish that it would cost less than what these are going to cost, but nevertheless, that is what it is. We have some interest. All the interested parties are Lake Bluff residents, which makes me feel a little better, but these are not inexpensive units, of course. Less than Eltunians, but still expensive. But you drive in the garage, you enter your foyer in the lower level. So there are 4 little foyers in the lower level. There's a stair and an elevator in each one. You go up to the first floor, there's 2 condominiums. You then go up to the second floor for the 2 units on the second floor. They each have roof decks. Those are all aligned with stairs and elevators as well. We have front porches, we have front doors. We're trying, this is not a small structure, we're not making any bones about that, but we're trying to make it as residential feel and scaling and streetscape as we possibly can. What we also wanted to do in terms of the planning aspect is we wanted to maintain pretty much the setback along the 3 of the setbacks. Scranton Avenue, we're generally aligned with the Eltunian Whitmer building. We're generally aligned with the back, the north side, and the distance from the property line on our west side is the same as what theirs is on the east side. We are better off than the Eltunian building in all cases, but not by much, just a couple feet. But the massing is very different. Of course, you can see the Eltunian building kind of in the background. They are 9.5 feet from the Scranton Avenue property line with a 30-foot high wall. We're about 10 or 11 feet at the fascia line, 12 feet back from the property line. And then obviously we have a pitched roof coming back. We have all the standard residential features that you would expect, but what is unusual here a bit is every unit, now we only have 4 of course, has a front porch and a front door. So if you're a guest, so you can see along Evanston, right where that person is kind of walking, that's a shared front porch. And then in the front, in the center on Scranton, that's a shared front porch for the 2 second-story units. Okay. We will get to the elevations, but what we have tried to do, and one thing I'm very proud of is we're not unanimous for all the neighbors, but there's frankly only one neighbor. I couldn't even get to neutral. I'm disappointed at that. But all the neighbors adjacent to this property to the east and south have all written notes and attended meetings. Very unusual for people to attend meetings if they're in support. They usually attend if they're not. So we're really proud of the fact that we've worked hard with the neighbors to make sure what we're proposing is something that they like. Next slide. Okay, if you could shrink this, because this is kind of important to see. This is a block plan. So this block plan, you can see how we're generally aligning on the Scranton Avenue side, the back, the north side, and we're 11 feet off the property line each way. Eltunian building is in ours off the shared property line. Along Evanston Avenue, we have a 20-foot setback. It's actually about 25 feet from the sidewalk because the property line is not on the sidewalk, which gives us a little more breathing room. That 20 feet is your standard front yard setback for single-family homes, and it allows us to preserve 3 mature oak trees along there, even though we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're 14 feet away from the closest, so we're going to do everything humanly possible to save it, but oaks are kind of temperamental. We're saving large evergreens along the north property line. That's between us and the White House to the north. Those provide great screening to the north, separating. And then there's 1 oak tree in the front yard that we're going to save as well. You can just see from the standpoint of the diagram here how our building kind of steps in and out with the front porches and so forth. Very different than the Eltunian building, which is a little boxier. If you look carefully at the numbers at the top, hopefully you can read it on what you have in front of you. One of the things that's interesting about this development is our property is 43%, and I think what you may be seeing, it says 48, that's frankly a typo, I apologize for that. We are 43% of the block. The bank building is 57. When you drive by, it doesn't look like 43% because of the way the bushes work, and there's an old parking lot from Northern Trust years ago and so forth. But the reality is, we have a pretty good sized piece of property here, and we think the size building, especially treated the way that we're doing, is appropriate. Next slide. So this is the streetscape. Hopefully you can blow that up a little. So this is the view from Scranton Avenue. So the building on the left should look familiar. That probably is not the final version, but it's very close to what it is. Certainly the massing is the same. And our building is on the right with the pitch roofs, the dormers. There's small roof decks up on the third level. When we first proposed this to the PCZBA, we had proposed it as limestone and stucco, much the same massing. And most of the coordination and integration between the two buildings, the burden falls on us because, Whitmer was out ahead of us. So their building is approved, you know that. So we changed the limestone to brick. Our intention is to use the same brick or as close as we can to get to that brick as a wainscot, and then on the single-story features that have a terrace, we're using the brick there, and then stucco and an architectural grade shingle, probably light black or dark gray, all TBD. But the massing, the materials are still a TBD, the 100%. But the massing, of course, we're pretty committed to, and hopefully that's something you'll look favorably upon. But those two structures are quite different. And by any objective measure, I would say our building is transitional, and certainly the neighbors feel so and support it. Next slide. So this is the site plan of just our piece of property. I guess what I'd like to show you is the condo entrances. So right there, if you stay right there, Mike, okay. Right along Scranton in the front is a shared porch with two entrances for condo 3 and 4, which would be on the second floor. Along Evanston, there's a shared entry porch with an entry to condo 1 and 2. That would be a condominium on the first floor. Those condos are actually, one's on the north side, one's on the south side. We have a covered patio in the back that the PCZBA looked favorably upon. And you can see the setbacks there defined in red. We fully expect to have to put an underground storage pipe along the west property line. And we do have a preliminary landscape plan that is in your packet as well. Next slide. So this is, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. What happens on the interior of the building is more for us to worry about. But from the standpoint of why we're doing things, this building is a bit of a Swiss watch. This is carefully orchestrated. You can see we have 8 parking places, underground parking, and one of the beauties of this is the ramp is hidden behind the garage door. I'll get to that on the last slide with the rendering again. But because the grade falls off to the northeast corner, we're able to gain about 2.5 feet when you pull up from the street from finished floor. So we're able to get about 25 feet of driveway that pitches actually toward the sidewalk and street. So a car can actually stop before the sidewalk, and that slopes down like any driveway would. The garage door opens, and then the ramp is hidden behind the garage door, which is a much better look. 8 parking places. You can see kind of the 4 foyers or vestibules on the garage level, low level, and then each one has a storage unit as well, right off their foyer. Next slide. So this is the first floor. I'm not sure there's really anything to talk about. One of the design features of the building, and if it becomes a question or an issue, I can certainly explain it. But we have this kind of fireplace chimney feature that is visible off the Scranton Avenue. So we have interior fireplaces and chimneys, 3 of them on each side of the kind of front porch along Scranton, that are all stacked next to one another. That was done intentionally so that we could try to get fireplaces for each unit, maintain as much exterior glass and natural light as we could, and it kind of sandwiched in the 3rd floor, the area that's up at the roof deck, in between the chimneys. As you guys probably know, the 3rd level and being over 30 feet is a variance. Let me backtrack a little. So our zoning relief is getting a single-family property to go to a PMD. When you get a PMD, I'm telling you everything you probably already know, you can only go 30 feet and you can't have a 3rd floor. What's interesting is the present single-family zoning allows a 3rd floor and allows 34 feet tall. But by going to the PMD, we actually lose ground on those fronts. So we have to ask for a variance for the 3rd floor, which is really access to a small roof deck, and the 3rd level, which the PCZBA looked favorably upon. Next slide. So this is the 2nd floor. What's interesting here is we've split the 2nd floor condos. One's east side, one's west side, whereas the 1st floor, one was on the north, one was on the south. And by the way, all the units are 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, as presently proposed. It's still in a preliminary design phase, so lots of, well, relatively customization remains, even though we are building the garage ceiling, 1st floor, out of precast or cast-in-place concrete. So we have a lot of latitude there. The remaining structure is going to be wood framed. So we have to, pay attention to stacking and that sort of stuff. So there's a limitation on how much customization they can be. Obviously, finishes can be completely customized. Next slide. So this is the 3rd floor level. If you could, bring it up. So there's the stair and the lift. So that stair and lift goes all the way to the lower level. This would be for the 2 2nd-story units. It has a small roof deck with a fireplace. An outdoor fireplace. The roof deck's about, I think, 13 by 14 or 14 by 15, and kind of a small interior area with a powder room up there for some limited entertaining. But that elevator, those 2 elevators that you see there going up to the roof deck, are perfectly placed under the ridge of the big gable in the front. I needed that extra height to be able to get the elevator overrun. So that's no accident. Instead of making that boxy, we wanted the peak of the roof to hide the elevator going all the way up to the 3rd level. Next slide. So this is the roof plan. And you can see the 2nd floor steps in from the 1st floor a little. And again, I can explain all that if you guys are interested. Next slide. So these are important. These are elevations. We didn't render these. Next time we see you, we will render them, but from the rendering, you can kind of get a sense of the color palette and the materials. But I do want to walk over here if I could. I'll speak loudly. This is something that we thought was very important. So this is the Evanston Avenue side, okay? Now, when we get a PMD, we're not obligated to meet daylight plane restrictions. However, the residence is over here, which is Gene Austin Mills and Lee Neistat. Weren't so happy with the project 6 months ago when we first proposed it. Well, this is the daylight plane here that would be required if it was a single family on the north property line. We are way, way back from that. Our argument is we were not being overbearing on the neighbors to the north even though frankly, with a PMD, we didn't have to. The Eltunian Whitmer building doesn't honor that daylight plane near as well. Okay, now, let's go back up here.
I'm not sure how well the people on the Zoom can hear you when you're not at the microphone, Tom,
Okay.
so,
I'll repeat it, but let me just point for,
okay.
oh, are there people on Zoom?
Yeah, there are.
Okay. So this is the front elevation, and this is the daylight plane for our west property line, Eltunian's east property line. But these are only for reference. These are not requirements. But you can see one of the big issues when the building was proposed on the bank building is the setback along their east side is only 10 feet. They can go by ordinance 30 feet tall, 10 feet high from Jason's property.
Thanks. Bill has a portable microphone for you. Thank you, Bill.
Well, I think I can probably stay over here. So the setback, I'll say it again, just so everybody can hear, because this is, and we didn't complain about this, but we're pointing something out. So the setback along the bank building's eastern property line is 10 feet, and you can go 30 foot tall by the PMD. Yet on the north side, their setback was 18 feet, which just doesn't categorically seem fair because both sides are single-family residential. But it is what it is. That's in writing. That's what Lake Bluff put into law basically years and years ago. So that is one of the things that triggered us to get going on this, because what happened with Jason's property when the Eltunian building got a favorable response and eventually got approved, that creates a negative, that's a hardship for a single-family home, having a 30-foot wall, 30-foot tall wall, 10 feet from the property line. So our daylight plane, we don't technically make the daylight plane. We've got some gables that are protruding into the daylight plane more than 20 feet, but it's not a requirement. My point is, we really tried to be sensitive to the neighbors, both north and to the west, with the daylight plane and not having our building be overbearing to the neighbors. Next slide. So these are the two other elevations. You can see some of the other daylight plane. The top one is, of course, the west elevation, has much the same character as the rest of the building. We have a small patio for one of the condominiums on the west side, and then we have a covered porch on the back that was added at the very last minute because we have an interested party that wanted a covered porch. And then scroll down, and that would be the back side, the north side. Next slide. And we've got a couple sections here that we're going to show you. So this first section is a section looking west, and if you look carefully, you can see that elevator centered right under the ridge. That's no accident. That kind of drove the geometry. The master bedrooms on the second floor condos will have a cathedral ceiling, and we're trying to tuck in the condensing units above the ramp. We'll have to introduce some air movement and some noise remediation, so there is no condensing units. We can't put them on the roof because we have pitched roofs, and we'd prefer to not put them on the ground to have noise related to our patios and the neighbors. Next slide. Next slide is a section looking south. You can see the ramp there. You can see kind of a diagram on the condensing units. And again, you can see the distance between our building and the Eltunian Whitmer building, 11 feet on each side. And then the last slide, I think.
The landscape plan?
Oh, yeah, that's the rendering again, and here is the landscape plan. Dan Horvat was nice enough to do the plan for us. This is a preliminary plan. The fact of the matter is, there isn't a lot to landscape here. I mean, the truth is, we're covering a fair amount of the building, and we're not going to overly landscape the Scranton Avenue and Evanston setbacks. We have some existing trees we're saving there. So we've put, typical sort of, accent landscaping in all the appropriate spots. We are having a raised planter in the front along the Scranton Avenue front porch. We've suggested, and this would be something I'd love to get some feedback on, in the PMD, it says it would be great to make a gesture to some public good, some public improvements. So we've introduced 4 benches along there. I'm not sure the PCZBA was all that excited about 4, let alone any, so I'd be curious about that. We're doing that really for Lake Bluff, not necessarily for the development, but we're happy to have a discussion about that. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I got a question before we get going here.
Sure.
Has the PCBA, has anything been done to really codify what that piece of property is? Have they given you the PMD? Have they gone away from residential to somewhere?
I only smirk because I have to see you guys again. I have to see them again. I have to be in front of the village board
Okay.
4 times. So after all that, they will codify it.
Okay.
But I, we went to the PCs. We knew this was a big ask. I'm just going to say it, right? We are going from single family to multifamily, okay? Now, we knew there was a lot of history suggesting that other people had proposed that, but we knew there was some opposition. So we weren't sure what the PCZBA was going to do. So we knew the comprehensive plan generally supported it, but we weren't sure if the village would had the strength to support it in the way they have done. They have now done that. I mean, they voted unanimously to support the PMD and the variances and the modifications and all that sort of stuff. So we have a ways to go, but I would say it looks promising.
Okay.
If that's a way to answer that.
That's close enough, that's close enough.
Yeah.
We're not just going in the
And
wind.
again, the neighbors, I mean, we're really proud of the fact that and we got a petition with a couple hundred signatures. I mean, now many of them weren't neighbors, but, clearly we're not doing the worst thing in the world for Lake Bluff. So I think generally it's been favorably received. So I don't expect somebody to come out of the woodwork and create a big fuss, but we never know.
Okay. All right. Sue, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so I took notes on the things that I really liked.
Okay, I'd like you to start that way.
There's a few other things, but I love the fact that you're working on saving those trees. I can definitely see that you are really trying to maintain a residential feeling, and transition from the downtown to the neighbors. I love that you're working with the neighbors. Setbacks, I love. I love the fireplaces on the roof deck. If I was buying one of those, I would really want that. That's just really so cool. I particularly like the attention that you paid to the daylight plane. I think if I were a neighbor, that would be hugely important to me, and I think the way that you've really worked to do that and maintain it, I think is awesome. I like that you're thinking about the condensing units and the noise, because I know that's a big deal to people. That and any kind of lights that are shining in their windows and things, which I did see a couple lights higher up, but it doesn't seem like
Well,
it's
they're all going to be
egregious.
residential coach lights. I mean,
Yeah.
We're going to have to do some sort of lighting study and
Right.
have dark sky requirements. We're going to
Yeah,
meet all those.
yeah. I think that it's really clear that you've done a lot of work really making this work, and especially the 4 units and all, and that you really care. The one thing I wasn't, my gut reaction to is, I know you talked about kind of trying to tie the Altunian building and this sort of together. You didn't really start out with the brick, and then you were like, okay, but maybe we should try to transition and add it. I personally understand that you're tying it, but I don't know that it's really doing anything for your building. Just when I look at it, just the brick and that, I feel like it looks to me a little bit like what it sounds like it is, which is you didn't start there and then you were like, okay, maybe we'll try to tie it together. I know you're still working on materials, but I personally think that it makes it's very, I think the building itself looks kind of complicated to me, and I think the brick then makes it, again, even another step looking more complicated. And I feel, and when you said it's sort of a Swiss watch kind of a thing, I feel like it looks a little Swiss watchy to me. Like, I feel like it could be, I don't know, I'm trying to articulate, but like a little simplified. It looks very complicated, I guess, is what I'm seeing. And maybe it's, I know, and I really do like the chimney feature, but maybe it's not stepped, maybe it's flat. I mean, maybe just, it's very, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? That's just my take. I get that you're trying to, really tie in the residential, and that I think is great. And I like that. And I think it's nice the way you have the roof line going and the daylighting, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, so I'll just address the one thing quickly. So complicated is maybe another word for me, is to break down the massing. It's a pretty big building.
Yeah.
We did a lot to try to do dormers and things that
Right.
might be considered complicated. There's probably other words that.
I know,
that
it's not a
wouldn't,
great
but
architectural word.
We
Trying to come up with
tried to break the mass down by creating dormers and gables
Right,
and so forth.
right.
Yep.
That's just my, I know it's kind of like that movie where somebody tells Mozart that there's too many notes. You know what I mean? And I think that it's like kind of crazy, but I guess that's just the word that's coming to my head, being on the spot. But that's, I don't know, maybe someone else can articulate it if they agree with me. But
I appreciate that.
I think that it's clear that you've really worked hard on this, and, it's really, you're really trying to kind of get everybody on board and address all the things millions of things that people want, so. That's all I got.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very challenging design exercise. I've done buildings like this, and it's hard to make all the units work and on the lot and stuff. But I really do love what you've done so far. I love the second floor terraces, the outdoor terraces, and that connection to the exterior. I generally like the design of the building. I think it's a good start. I too think that, a couple things. I noticed you used brick on the stone on the chimneys, and then brick on the east elevation. And I'm wondering what this would look like if it were all just stone and stucco. There's probably a cost involved with that,
I can show you a rendering of that. There was some discussion about whether we really wanted to change it to brick. I mean, I'll just say, we changed it to brick to try to blend in with the alternative building. I'm just gonna say it. Yeah, and even the PCZBA, which is not supposed to talk about aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
Can't resist, and there was some mixed comments on that as well. You wouldn't have a hard time convincing Jason and his wife Courtney that, we showed limestone. I can even show you what that would look like, because I asked Mike to load that in the deck, thinking that might be a comment.
Yeah. Okay. And then I would agree with, I guess particularly the the upper part of the south elevation. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on. And I just think there's maybe too many competing elements. It looks good in the elevation, but then when I see it in 3D, I just see a lot of different elements that are sort of competing with one another. I'm just wondering if maybe that could be simplified a little bit, or you could combine some things or something to try and just simplify it a little bit. But the rest of the building, I'm pretty sold on.
Yeah, it's a good sized roof. I was trying to break it down for scale, no question about it.
Yeah.
Certainly simplified is less costly, and certainly can't argue easier to build. So certainly can consider all this. Sure.
Yep. Okay, that's all I had.
Matt?
Let me just say, I think we say this every time someone comes in front of us. It seems like, again, this is a very important site for our village. We had it with Target, we had it with the Altunian. All these are new building profiles for our little village. And you have the first, to your point, I've been on this board for 14 years. I've been hearing transitional block forever. And this is the first go of what that really means. You know, I always tell my clients, we say all these words, at one point we have to put them down in an architectural form. So it's a very tough project, and the program is very tough. So I totally appreciate you trying to do that transition from that more commercial business to the pure residential. You know, you're the guy that's doing that transition for us. So truly tough project to try to accommodate all of those needs. I'm going to be repeating mostly what they said in terms of, I know it's a larger mass, but sometimes when we try to break it up, we're actually creating more visual to it than simplifying it. You know, I think you have like dormers kind of running into a vertical wall and then a dormer above that. There's just a lot of stepping on this. Mostly on the south elevation that, you know, if I look at it as a single family, like kind of break it in half, like is that a successful single family? Because that's what you're trying to create is like four, right? Kind of four individual. And it seems a little, you know, I love the chimneys, but that, you know, that stepping, the dormers stepping back, you know, on this large asphalt roof, just feels a little heavy for what kind of that street front may want. I also feel like, to the point, simplifying the materials would be a big plus. You know, you have some prairie aspects. You know, there's a little bit of shingle style in there, your little arbor above the garage entry. The way the windows, you know, with the grills on the top and the transoms above, there just seems to have, some have shutters, some don't. The more rectangular corner block feels, if that was on the side facing the Eltonian, you know, that transition makes sense. Bringing it to the corner may feel, you know, a little, I don't know if I would do that, just if that building wasn't there, would I be doing that? And if not, you know, why should you do it? For me, I would rather see a little more simplified version of this, you know, just to lessen the amount of elements that are on this building. I just think the number of elements kind of create even a larger building larger because your eye is just traveling everywhere. But I do appreciate the challenge that we gave you in the village and, you know, trying to create, you know, for, I'm sure they're very expensive units, trying to maintain that, you know, kind of level of integrity for the project.
Okay.
Ed?
First of all, I think it's a pretty nice solution as it relates to, you know, the term scale. I think that's the big challenge on the corner, in my opinion, is how to manage the scale on that outside corner. So I think you've been very successful in terms of bringing the roof lines down to a one-story or to more of a human scale where you have these porches that are approachable, and I think that's extremely successful. I would echo what others have said in terms of the south elevation. I'm looking at the chimneys and going, that's a really cool idea. But instead of the 5 tiers, maybe it's 2 tiers, and it contains the dormers more simply. So I again, love the concept. Secondarily, when I look at, you know, the materiality, I'm on board with them. I think you either go all brick or you go stone instead of having the 2 sets of materials. And I don't know that you need to marry it all to the Eltonian building. I think you've done a great job of designing an aesthetic that stands alone and does not need to acknowledge in any way its neighbor, in my opinion. So I think it's a really great start, and I think, to me, the most important thing here is managing the scale aspect as a human, and you're traveling around this building, and how you marry and how you engage with it. I think you've done an awesome job. So I commend you for that. So thank you.
Another thing that I like about it is the slope of the roof somewhat mirrors the slope on the library roof that's just up the street. I like the fact that it does that. Other than that, I just had one minor question. I agree with everything everybody said. Are there any other variances you need in addition to the 30 feet?
Well, I take a deep breath because the ordinance has variances and modifications. So in my world, those are kind of the same. So I'll step you through it. So there are two variances for sure, the third floor and the height, okay? Then there are some modifications. The modification is when there's a text language that allows us to become a PMD. Because our development isn't part of the CBD, they have to amend it to say adjacent to the CBD. Okay, once they do that, it triggers our ability to become a PMD, but our lot is not big enough. Do you want all this information? Or I don't want to bore you with it, but there's a bunch of layers to that. So the covered porch in the back required a modification, not a variance. That was a patio until 3 days before we went in front of the PCZBA because one of the interested parties wanted a roof over it, and we're 10 feet away from the property line, which would be closer than that. We're asking for an 8-foot fence along the north property line instead of a 6-foot fence because, frankly, Lee Neistat, one of the owners, had asked for that, and we honored his request. And there may be another modification, but the two variances are basically the third floor and the
Is there any fence on the west property line?
There is. Altunian's putting in a 6-foot wood fence.
Okay.
And you're connecting to it with a fence coming from your building over to your brick pillar? Yeah, okay. How tall is that fence?
6 foot.
6 foot, okay.
Okay, that's all I had.
I would just echo what everyone else has said. Regarding the south elevation though, somehow the windows, you've got lots of different sizes and, you have, on the third level, you have 3 windows, below it you have 4 windows. Somehow that, I don't know, just seems to me a jumble. And, you might want to take a look at that. Particularly when you add the muttons in, you get kind of different sizes. And, I don't know, it seems to hurt things. And then the other is, I don't understand why the fascia on the east elevation, the first floor fascia on the east elevation, is higher than the fascia on the south elevation.
Do you want to put that up, or?
Oh, sure, I can do that.
Roof deck, right?
So the fascia on the east elevation is,
Let's see.
well, they're supposed to be the same. I think they are drawn at the same. I'm not sure why you're drawing that conclusion. That fascia wraps around.
Well, I'm just making an assumption that the entry doors and the transoms are the same height on both elevations. And on the south elevation, the fascia sits right at the top of the transom. And on the east side, it's, I don't know, looks like it's like 8 inches above.
Well, because the roof comes out a little farther over the garage door, the fascia does come down ever so slightly, but it certainly could be a drafting error. I mean, I don't deny that that's a possibility.
All right, I'll accept that. I thought that was a design decision that you worked on for hours.
Yeah. No, that fascia, albeit, so the fascia on the east side, so the fascia at the front porch doesn't come out quite as far as where it comes out over the garage doors. So the fascia above the garage doors is supposed to be a little lower. That continues around the north side, and frankly, then continues around the west side as well. So whether it's drawn that way or not, that's the design intent.
Because what caught my eye was the amount of space between the top of the overhead door and the fascia.
Well, that's because we're down, I mean, the garage door is down 2.5 feet from finished floor. You know, and that's why I put, you know, the decorative, you know, brackets and everything there to try to fill that gap. I mean, that's all a bit of a work in progress, but I, you know, I want to do something to make it look more intentional than just left over.
That's really all I had.
If anyone on the Zoom wants.
I'm done.
Oh, yeah,
I'm done.
yeah, okay, we'll
No,
let you
go
go
ahead,
first.
go ahead, let
But after Bob speaks,
No,
if
no,
anyone
go
on the
ahead,
Zoom
let
wants
the
to
Zoom-
speak, you
let the
can
Zoom,
press a button and raise your hand. It's good to let them know in advance, that way they can.
Yeah,
you know,
okay, because
press the
I
button if
have,
they want.
and these are not in any order whatsoever. Is your ceiling height 10 feet?
9 feet.
Okay, because the transom windows everywhere seem to be a complication that don't need to be there. And I'm guessing that you're taking the windows to the ceiling. Is that what you're doing there?
No, the header would be 8 foot, the top of the lower window would be 6'8", and, you know, they make a window specifically for that, so it's a small, little clear story window.
Okay. There's just something about that row on every single window that just seems to be a little fussy. I know you have been battling with the chimneys a little bit, and I think a lot of it depends on what this building is made out of. You know, I know you've gone back and forth with the brick and the stone. I'm not opposed to the brick, but I would be opposed, I think, if it was the brick to match the Eltunian. If you look across the street, all the bricks, all the way down from Buffalo, you know, from Bluffington's all the way to the other end, there's like 3 or 4 different bricks there. It's not a contiguous row, so I wouldn't have a problem if you want to stick with brick. I'm a little worried about the stone, and I'm worried about the massing of these chimneys. And again, this depends on the material, and I was thinking if it's brick, you could chamfer the edges instead of having one big massive thing. And then I went even farther and said if it's brick, you could do, I think it's a Dutch thing where you rotate the square. Yeah, and so now, instead of that massive thing, you've broken it down into distinct pieces, and they can be the same height, they're probably too big, or they can be, you know, just stepping down like you have them. And then they'd have to make a transition where you've got walls dying into them. And let's see, I think it's going in the right direction, Tom. I'm not trying to be negative here at all. The garage door height, well, there's 2 things. The garage door height and the thing above it, you know, the little trellis guy, it seems like, I know it's a gimmick to try and break up that mass, you know, how big that brick lintel is up there. It's probably pretty big, but I'm not sure it's a good gimmick there. It's the only place it occurs. And the height of it took me a while to figure out the corner block that's brick.
What?
The corner piece that's brick,
Yeah.
you know, it's high because it's a railing for a deck up there, right? Am I right?
It's a railing for the terrace.
Okay, because, and I don't think you'd want to lower that and have an open railing.
Yeah. And by the way, there was a comment, there is one of those on the west side as well.
Yeah, it's not as obvious.
It doesn't show in the rendering,
Yeah,
but there is one
yeah.
on each side. Yeah.
Okay. You know, those are kind of the big picture things. I've seen the presentations you've made at the, you know, you have to stay up really late to watch all those. But I've seen the stone one. And
Oh, do you want to see it? Did you load it, Mike?
have you got it?
Let's see, I can pull it up
I
here.
sent them because I suspected that conversation would come up.
Yep, let me pull that up.
You know, and let's talk about the fence for a minute.
Okay.
You're gonna do a wood fence. I'm on my 4th wood fence. And the one I've got right now is 4 years old and it's rotten because they're using, they're using new growth wood and they've taken almost a quarter of an inch out of the thickness. So they just fall apart almost immediately. You can't even hold a nail anymore. So I'm wondering if you really want to do an 8-foot fence out of crappy wood. And, I know it's a lot cheaper than a brick fence, but an 8-foot fence every 5 years starts to get pretty pricey, or even a 6-foot fence. So I'm just going to throw that out because I think an 8-foot fence is it's not going to make any difference to Lee. Unless he's in his backyard and he's got a garage there.
He does, and he has arborvitae. We were doing it as a gesture. Yeah. So, Mike, it would have been standalone slides. It wasn't in that presentation.
Oh, it wasn't in that set.
You may not have loaded it.
Yeah, I guess I didn't. Okay.
And, I've got other thoughts that are just sort of random. I agree with people. I think the Evanston elevation is pretty darn nice. It looks like a big house with a double door, and there's a lot of those being well done. I think too many sheds off the gable. I mean, off the north roof. Just seemed to be it needs to be simplified, and I again would simplify the chimneys if I could because they're kind of cool on the inside. I think they're just too heavy on the outside.
Okay.
And maybe those chimney pots you could live in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, they're as tall as they are because I got to get above the ridge. I mean,
Oh, I know that, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to get them shorter, but
No, I think that
they're
stepping
driven
down
by
that's a logical solution.
And I suspect the perspective is not doing me any help there because they look a little maybe taller than they are, but.
They look wider in the rendering than on your elevation. Like maybe it's just artistic.
It's a good thing this is a workshop, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I know. The south elevation. I'm looking at the what I assume are the windows for the little places on the roof at the very top.
South elevation.
The top row,
Okay.
all the way across, are windows for the roof deck. All right?
Yep.
Okay. What if those were sliding doors that just had no mullions, muttons, and everything, and they just kind of faded away?
Well, what's on the east and west side of the chimneys are sliding doors. Those have muttons in them. That's a 9-foot slider, so if you're suggesting getting rid of the muttons, then it's certainly easy to do.
Well, I'm just kind of thinking out loud as something that we're thinking
I mean,
about.
those are the access to the roof deck, of course, so they have to be doors of some kind.
Yeah, right. And, how much of that you see, if I'm standing on the street.
You don't see much of it because of the perspective.
But in the drawing, everything is right in your face. It's very.
Yeah, and
flat.
I think the rendering is probably accurate in that respect. You don't even see those doors in the rendering.
All right, for now, that's it. I think, I think it's the biggest thing you have to work out is what's it made out of? And when you say stone, what does that mean? Does that mean?
Well, it's limestone.
Cut stone, limestone, I mean square, boulder-like, rock,
No, fieldstone.
fieldstone? Okay.
Yeah, it would be to match the chimneys, basically.
Yeah.
But it was still a wainscot. It was the same concept, only it was just limestone to match the chimney instead of brick. I mean, I did have a rendering of all brick, and that was really heavy-handed. So we dismissed that right away. I mean, again, this is a large building. I mean, it even for a large house, it's a large house. So we were working really hard to use every trick I had to break down the massing. you know, you use pitch roofs, you use dormers, you use materials, you change up the materials, you even add some shutters, you do all those things.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking at, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one-story roof line at the sidewalk is great. It's really gonna give it a pedestrian feel.
You know, this is just a minor thing, and maybe you did it on purpose, but I'm looking at the west elevation, which is basically facing Eltunians, right?
Yep.
And every gable has got a different kind of vent or window in it. And I'm just wondering if consistency is better than not.
Okay, let's take a quick look.
And there's something wrong with the size of the chimney by the port. It's a massive chimney. Not height-wise, but
Yeah, it's drawn a little thick. Mike, you don't have access to the old PCZBA workshop presentations, do you?
No, not quickly enough.
So if anybody was so inclined, the second workshop, we went to the workshop twice. One of the workshops, we showed the limestone. Probably the second workshop that would have been done in maybe December. So if you're so inclined, obviously, you can go online and look at it.
it's there. You can
Yeah.
see it, yeah.
Can I mention just one thing that's maybe beyond where we are, but just, you have those entry stairs from the south elevation, right? You come in the front door, those entry stairs, and then you have that window sitting at the landing. If you look at, I'm assuming that landing, say 30 inches above finished floor, and you look at that south elevation and you have those two windows, that top of that window would be like 4'2". I don't know if that's your desired
Oh, yeah, I get it.
outcome. You know, that's just, if that ever, you know, I'd rather get things out now. I don't know if that's what you want to keep, and if so, that's fair. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, now, anybody from,
No, I don't see anyone raising their hand, so I guess no one wants to speak from the Zoom.
Tom, anything else you need from us?
No. Well, I mean, any specific feedback is great. I think, based on what I'm hearing, we'll be in front of you twice again. I mean, it's hard, based on the feedback I got, to hit it on the nose for you guys, so.
You're pretty, it's not far away.
Yeah, I'm not, everyone can look at it later if they want. I don't know if we really want to pull up the old PCCBA right now. Yeah.
Okay. What's your time frame?
Well, we're actually trying to get the foundations started before the worst of the winter closes up, and Eltunian, we're kind of hoping Eltunian will do our foundations because he's putting a crane shared on both properties, so we're trying to take advantage of that. So let's say we'd like to start our concrete foundations in November.
I mean, everything we're talking about is, well, with the exception of what the building is made out of, whether it's gonna be stone or that has a foundation, you know, implication, but, everything else doesn't have anything to do with the shape of the building, I don't think. I mean, we got some, I've done lots of projects in the past where you started with a foundation permit if you knew the rest of it was gonna go okay.
Yeah, yeah, the issue, I mean, and again, the south elevation, I think, has room for improvement. The likelihood when I come back to you in 30 days, I hit it on the nose, so you're all happy, is going to be hard. I certainly can even offer a couple options. You know, that is a bit of a challenge. I mean, we're trying not to make it, I mean, first of all, simplifying it was not part of the equation when we first went into the PCZBA, because we're trying to break down the mass. So those are kind of counterintuitive. But the PCZBA seems favorably, and you guys are, so maybe simplification on that subject is going to be just fine. I don't think the neighbors are going to complain. I mean, yeah.
Well, the kind of stuff we're talking about, nobody's gonna notice except us and you.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll give it,
Our
give
job
it a
is to
go.
help you make it better.
Yeah, and we're all for that, for sure.
We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do a intermediary? So that when when it comes next time, we've already had feedback? Is there any way to do that, or?
Probably the best thing would just be to come back here as another workshop, which you could certainly do if you'd like.
Well, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, like,
I think
yeah,
we've done that.
Yeah, like we've done that.
Probably won't do, there's no incentive for us to come back as a workshop. We'll just come back formally, and maybe I get it right and you like it and I get enough.
Oh, it would, maybe not the whole thing, but, picking away at it to make it so that when you do come back.
Yeah, the only thing, and there's no mechanism to do that. I mean, it'd be great if informally you guys could look at it between meetings. I don't think that's allowed.
No, it is.
No, it is, that's what I'm suggesting.
It is.
Oh, well, I
It'd be
didn't
great if he
Yeah,
didn't
know
that's
have
how
to come
that
back.
is, but
Yeah, that's
if
what-
you could do it, I can do it.
Great if he didn't have to come back twice.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
He's got a
If we
project
could
he's got to get
Shorten
done.
this timeframe
So
so that this whole thing can work as a
another
package.
workshop
Yeah,
seems silly
and-
to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
Like,
that
he's
puts,
gotta
that puts
advance.
the rush on
Yeah.
you to maybe investigate some of these issues. Some of them you've
No, I
already
just need to
done.
work on the south elevation, and we got some material issues to,
Yeah.
but the material issues, you need to see it. It's frankly maybe already done, and you just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, Mike, you can maybe tell me the mechanism to do it informally before the next meeting. If there's a way to do that, I'm all for it.
We have
Yeah, I mean,
to
there-
publish something, don't we?
Well, we'd have to do a special meeting notice if we want to do a special meeting. Are you,
No,
you're saying
just
we
a-
want to do it before the June meeting?
Yeah.
The beginning
Well,
of June?
I'm not sure I want to drag you guys into another meeting.
Yeah, we could do a special meeting notice in another meeting, but we'd all have to agree on a date when people can
I
make
was
it.
hoping we could just email it to you and you send your comments in and.
Yeah, we
No, I
can't do it
get
right now, but is that something that you could work with in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, of course.
Because anybody else,
And that would take
But you're
place
coming
here.
back in the final phase quite a bit into the future, right? So I'm not sure that you really need the,
Yeah, but unless I'm mistaken, because of the meeting schedule, if I came back formally, I would have to be close enough for you to be able to recommend to the board that what I'm doing is good and here's a couple tweaks. If they're more than tweaks, then I think I have to come back and see you.
Yeah, I'm saying that the June board meeting, you're good to go.
No, I got so much.
he's a lot farther into the future before he's to the final
with us.
phase of the board.
So just the way it goes, it's village board meeting the 12th, Monday, then the 28th. There's 2 readings for the preliminary site plan, okay? Then I think I can come back to you guys beginning of June. Then I go back to the PCZBA end of June, and then back to the village board twice again, assuming I get them all right.
In July, yeah.
Yeah, so if I see you guys twice more, it just, pushes it out another.
So he could certainly be here June and July. I mean, if it took 2 meetings, you could be here June and July and still be before the
Yeah,
village
but
board.
I got to get you guys happy before I can get the village board to approve it formally.
But we meet earlier in July than the village board, so we still have 2 meetings between now and your final village board approval
Yeah,
on a
maybe.
regular meeting schedule.
Yeah, if that's the case, it doesn't really matter. I'm not sure how your recommendations dovetail into the PCZBA, but you may know.
Yeah, I think it can go, usually, well, yeah, I think it can go either way, as far as whether we go first or PCZBA goes first.
Well, I don't want to waste your
Traditionally,
time,
they
it's
were
late. I
first,
mean, we
yeah.
can work out some of these details.
Right, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to bring you in for a special meeting for looking at the south elevation. That
can't.
doesn't seem right.
We've done it.
Yeah,
We've done it, really, Tom.
Well, you get back to me. If
Okay,
you
okay,
can, I
we'll work it out.
can.
Yeah, we'll work
But
it out.
that seems
Yeah, we-
like, that's a big ask, it seems like.
Right.
One last thought is, a couple people mentioned simplifying the south elevation. And at least in the rendering, you have 2 steps of stone in front of the chimneys.
Yeah, the rendering, it's kind of hidden, and probably the rendering probably was out of sequence with the elevations, so next time you see that, that'll be a little better coordinated. There was intended to be stone going down a little farther, the way the elevation shows, yeah.
But I'm just wondering if, it just could be the chimney. Do you need that shelf in front of the chimney?
So
I think it's containing the terrace, right, or that upper terrace?
the upper part of the fireplace is, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. Let me get to that. Can you put that up, Mike, the south elevation?
Sure.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's containing the side of
I'll switch over to this one, yeah.
the roof deck railing, basically. I wanted that to die into the side of the fireplace, yeah.
Right, but it could just return.
Yeah, go to the Mike, when you go back to the streetscape. That's
Okay.
rendered, that may,
Whoops.
yep, if
Sliding
you could
past.
blow it up, that
Sure.
may be the best spot to look at that. I don't know how big you can get it.
How's that?
Well, hopefully you guys' eyes are better than mine, but that is rendered per the elevation.
Two more.
Can you make it life-size?
What was your comment, Art?
You can't even really see the steps in that.
No.
The shelf there, you see the knee wall that's for the balcony, and that dies into the side of what essentially is a shelf.
So this is a shelf you're talking about right here.
Right.
Yeah, that's deliberate, whether it's the right thing to do or not, but this piece here was, this railing was framing into the side of that, so that was the way it was being
Right.
terminated there.
And I was just saying that from the standpoint of, looking to simplify that elevation, removing the shelf and simply returning the balcony knee wall to the chimney might be an alternative. That's,
Could be, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, the alternative would make the chimney even bigger. If we didn't, if we just ran this all the way up, it'd even make it bigger. Get rid of this piece, bring this around and turn it, yeah. I get it.
Okay, so where are we?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
It's a workshop, so I think I've got what I need, right?
Yeah.
So everybody that has heartburn about the trees, how many do you think in reality, is that been kind of cleared away now? I know you're gonna try and
Well,
save some, and,
Yeah, the way, the PCZBA gave us their unanimous recommendation, and one of the caveats was we had to do a tree replacement plan in case the trees don't make it. So the evergreens along the north property line, I think, are highly likely to make it. They're way hardier than the oaks.
yeah.
The oaks, even if we're far enough back, they're so temperamental, if it's no better than 50-50. There's a couple oaks in the parkway that'll survive. So, there's an argument to be made, don't even try to save the oaks, because they're not gonna make it anyway.
They're 100 years old,
Yeah.
so, or whatever.
So, they are drawn accurately. The closest oak trunk is 14 feet from the front of the property. So we can't do a standard overdig. We're going to have to do some shoring there. We'll have to root prune the oak. The closest oak, let's say, is a goner. And then when the other two oaks, their friend leaves, then those two oaks remaining are going to be unhappy and probably die in the short term. But, you know, it seems like everybody wants us to give it the old college try, so we're game. But they did ask for a tree replacement plan for that exact reason.
So that's not a 4-inch replacement then?
Yeah, it's going to be an expensive replacement,
Yeah,
but.
right. You know, start it now and have a contingency going every year. Oh, the other thing, I know, I just had it written down, is the idea of benches on the corner.
Oh, you
Doesn't
didn't
seem
comment
like
on
a
that. Well, they're
good
not at the corner.
Yeah.
Well, anywhere along there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they belong at the corner because this is a residential
Right.
corner.
Yeah.
So it isn't intended to be a public corner, unlike the other corner. The Altunian corner, they're, you know, building the curb out and doing that. There was conversation about that. But are benches as proposed a good idea or a bad idea?
I don't think I would put it there. If I was one of those tenants and I had a bench by my
Yeah.
front door, I wouldn't like that.
I don't think you need them.
Okay. I mean, the PCZBA wasn't all that excited about them either, so you don't have to ask me twice.
You probably have to do some kind of a public thing, like you mentioned earlier.
Well, nobody's asking us for it. We're just trying to be benevolent to do it. So frankly, that was our, you know, we could put a bike rack in, I mean, all those, you know, token sorts of things. But, you know, and there was talk maybe 4 is too many, 1 on each side, you know, but.
You know, it's not a public space anymore.
No,
You
yeah.
got Bartholomew over here, and, you know, he's not public, he's on the same corner. He should have a bench too then.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's no reason to consider it still public space. Other
If you
than
go
the
to the cross
sidewalk.
street to the library, they've got about 10 benches.
That's the public building, and
Yeah.
that's 3 houses up.
Right.
Yeah.
But you said something about a planter, right? Did you?
Well, if you can see it, it's a raised planter. So it's really just, you know, a place for some special ornamental plants that would be on each side of the entry to the
Yeah.
shared porch.
Yeah, I'd rather see just the sidewalks coming straight out to the public sidewalk and greenery on either side. I mean, think that's probably a nicer,
Do what?
get rid of that, the concrete to the, you know, the sidewalks, how they flare on either side. Just have the sidewalk straight in and give that back to grass and some plants and call it a day. I think that's a nicer gesture
Just
to the
have one
community.
sidewalk instead of 2. So,
Well, I don't mind the two, I'm just saying, you know, he's creating this
just get rid of
L
the
for the
benches.
benches.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of that whole thing and just bring the grass up or the landscape. I think that's a nicer gesture for the community than more sidewalk and bench.
Well, isn't he trying to miss a tree?
No. It was just a gesture to
Yeah.
provide some public benefit.
Yeah, nobody.
Okay, I'm glad we got that comment squeezed in.
Yeah, I guess the one comment I would have about that raised planter is you don't want it all the way up against the public sidewalk because there's a snowplow
Yeah,
in
we
the
can-
winter
we
that
can
could
pull it
hit
back.
it, so you want
Yeah.
it a little ways away if you're doing that.
Yeah.
there's another reason. Dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good job.
I'm gonna set that there. That's rolling off.
I'll catch
All right, thank you all.
those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, so we have one more item, if I can navigate to it.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
And then can I bring up an item afterwards?
Sure.
Okay.
What's next?
Okay,
We've got the bridge, I was just trying to
yeah.
navigate
Thank
to
you.
it here. This thing gives me a little trouble because it blocks where I need to get to. Zoom thing, oh, here we go.
Well, just for while you're finding it, so the people that are watching need to know that the Green Bay Bridge is going to be replaced, and we're talking about that right now.
Yeah, so the village is about to start the design work for the Green Bay Road Bridge on the south side of town there. And I think Drew has given our designer kind of a preliminary concept to base it on the Moffett Road Bridge and do the, textured concrete for the abutments and then the metal guardrail in the middle and all that. And we just wanted ABR's feedback on the preliminary concept up front, and then, of course, we'll bring the final design here for approval. So, looking for your feedback on the concept. And I guess one question is, should all this, concrete that looks like stone just be a brief bookend and have more metal railing, or should we do it as shown here, where there's more of the concrete stone leading up to it? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if anybody's looked at it, but I went over there the other day, if I could turn my phone back on, and took a picture of part of it. And it's hard to tell where they're proposing it to go, but it seems like it's a long way. And I kind of walked along the east side of the bridge, and if I can find a picture.
Yeah, I could do that, yep. Yeah, so there's kind of a long gradual drop off. So before it's truly bridge for the road, there's more of a drop off, unlike over at Moffett where the bridge kind of begins suddenly.
That's kind of where that's on the east side.
Yeah.
And that's the only picture I took because there was too much traffic.
Yeah, no, right.
Really, it was 5 o'clock.
Yeah. No.
Nope. What did I do?
There's the Google Earth screen up there.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that if we took, if I guess where they started the stonework, if we made that about 20 feet shorter this way, because they were taking it, I think, all the way up to where the the trusses are.
Yeah.
And that's too far.
Yeah.
Why have I never noticed this?
I really never noticed it either.
Because you live on the other side of town.
That's true.
I drive
It's like
every
over
day.
there in the Wild West.
Yeah, we're over in the Wild West. Thank you, Bob.
So here you see the joint where the bridge is, and at this joint here where the guardrail's beginning, it is getting to be a large drop off pretty quick there.
Yeah.
So it does hit your 30-inch drop off where you need a guardrail for there right away.
Well, it was how far they go that way.
Right, but so they, right,
Well, you need
so,
the guardrail, but you don't need the concrete.
correct. You could bring the metal farther over
I'm
and have a
thinking
shorter
that-
concrete.
That if they started, I don't know where they started the concrete.
I'm assuming it's here where the guardrail starts
'Cause
today.
I went out about 20 feet and
Uh-huh.
said that would be a better place to stop it.
Out this way,
Yeah,
yeah.
and let the rest of it be bridge.
What view, Dean? Is this heading towards?
But, so Bob, if you started the concrete here, you would have some other type of guardrail before the concrete, then you'd have concrete, then you'd have metal guardrail in the middle.
No, you have the concrete start there.
Start
and you
here
go out
and go to here and
to
end,
there, and then the rest of it
and
is
then do
metal.
more of it metal.
Because you
Okay,
don't have
that makes sense.
you don't have the trusses anymore, so
Right.
it's just a continuous,
Yeah.
Right, got it.
It's right there.
I agree, because I feel like all that stone looks really long and
And it's, the
stony.
more of it you see, the more fake it becomes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With that transition on the back fence there, where one meets the other, that looks really kind of bad.
It's very scary to walk over that thing when
Yeah.
there's traffic.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, you have to be very tough to live on that side of town and walk over there. It's not for the east side faint of heart people.
The pansies
Yeah,
that live
us west siders, we do that at night.
Yeah.
And you run over it.
We run. I'm skateboarding across that guy, yeah.
I got another question, is somebody puts the corrugated guardrail before anything starts.
Mm-hmm.
One end is smashed up pretty bad on
Yeah.
the east side.
Uh-huh.
Well, you go by that every day, don't you?
I go by it every day.
Yeah.
So what do you think, then? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I love the old trellis, and I love the metal, old ironed out, rusted out,
We were
but
supposed to be able to
I know.
keep it, and-
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing.
Is it possible to make the sidewalk wider over the bridge?
I think they almost
Seems like
have
it'd be
to,
very
right? I mean, are
dangerous.
they wide? That's a great, are we widening
I am
that
not
walk at all?
100% sure on that.
You know, there was real, when we did the Moffett Bridge,
Yeah,
you know, there was real restrictions about, if you didn't have a railing along the
yeah,
sidewalk.
I mean, that's why this seems,
Roadside, it had to be like 5 feet or something.
yeah, that's what, it's a great question, because,
Because right
I'll
now,
ask.
yeah,
you got a 2x4 and a
Yeah.
metal fence.
Because on the west side of the bridge, you've got that gap, what I think is a gas line.
prayer.
That goes across the
It's really an
Yeah, I
awful
think
thing.
so.
so.
Right,
You remember when it used to be wood?
Like goes over the ravine, right?
yeah. Yeah, right,
That
there's a
was wood
gas line
planks.
that goes over
Yeah.
the
That went over that
railroad
I
tracks.
moved in.
Yep.
You should go back to wood.
There you go.
I'm not sure about the green, but I always feel like green is more, I know you're trying to blend in, but it almost makes it worse,
Yeah.
but,
I like the comparison with the Moffett Bridge. I
Mm-hmm.
like the way the Moffett Bridge turned out, except that it needs painting, and we never seem to get around to painting it.
It was supposed to be painted last year. but
Yeah.
it didn't
Yeah,
get
right.
there.
There's another bridge to compare it to, and that's the one that's right by the train station. And that one is full of mistakes, and I just hope that we don't copy anything like that one.
I think we're good with the Moffett Bridge. With,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that idea.
Yeah.
Or do they?
No, it's nice.
yeah, I mean, is there,
That won a state award, by the way. I don't know if anybody
Yeah.
knew that.
Yeah. But the traffic
So
is
this
much
new
different.
bridge will
Yeah, it's
probably
totally
be
different thing.
quite a bit
and it's on the
wider
west side, I don't think we
than the
deserve
current
the
one.
Moffett design.
Because if you're saying you need 5 feet
No, we'll give you the green.
to walk
Because the green-
You could have
on
the-
each side of the
Thanks.
bridge.
the fake stuff.
There's no way that's 5 feet right now.
Nothing worse than
What's
fixed.
that?
There's no way that's 5 feet.
No,
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
you can't, it's a single file bridge. And it's scary because you can see it is 2x4s and the metal and crap.
Yeah,
Right, but what I'm saying is the overall new bridge, if,
Probably will be wider, yeah.
you know, is gonna be side to side much
I don't
wider.
know who's building it. Is it the state?
No, it's the village.
But they have to,
mean,
That's not
yeah, it's on,
that they're showing right
who
there.
owns the
Right, but you
road?
see, they've got,
Oh, it's a village road,
Yeah,
it's not a
that's-
state
So
road.
it's not a state
So I
road.
think we do get some
currently
grant
they have the-
funding to help with it.
metal
at times.
traffic barriers
Yeah, yeah.
going on each side of it.
yeah, I read about it.
Yeah.
Even the lanes on the
I mean, it's gonna
Moffett
take a
Bridge are
year.
wider than this.
Why don't they make it a one-way bridge with traffic lights on each end?
Long Grove? Long Grove has that.
To encourage the people to use something other than Green Bay Road.
They're gonna have to for a long time.
Oh my God, do you see the schedule?
Yeah.
It's painful. I'm right, oh my God,
You gotta move.
I gotta move. It's like the flooded viaduct for a year and a half situation. Everybody's just gonna be,
All right, so what do we think? We're supposed to be telling the engineer what we think?
Yeah, right, your comments for that. So I hear less stone, shorter distance of stone there, so more metal guardrail, less stone. And wider sidewalk if possible.
and maybe a different color.
Maybe consider like Corten steel
Yeah,
for the
Why
handrail.
don't you want to do the green?
it just seems to,
Huh? That's right.
Yeah, but it also has
Consistency
to
in
be-
Lake Bluff.
Right, but to the point, you know, that has to be repainted periodically. You know, the
right.
Corten just never needs to be, look to the future of the
Well, it
Lake
looks like
Bluff
what it
Tap-
is right now, but it's not. It's just a rusty old bridge, but it looks like,
Yeah.
from a distance, it looks like Corten.
Right,
looks
right.
good enough for Picasso. Can I bring up one issue before we?
Sure.
So I don't know if this is the right
Yeah, it is.
setting for it, but the new benches that mysteriously showed up in front of Half and Half and what's soon to be the extension of it, just seems to be a disservice to our community. I'm just trying to figure out how those showed up, if those are permanent. There's 15 of them.
I went by there this morning at noon. I walked up there yesterday, walked through it. There's 12 of them.
Okay, so I stole
They
3.
are
I'm taking
not-
3 away every weekend. Hopefully they don't figure it out.
They're not in compliance with their, with their approval there. They have more than was
Yeah.
approved, so they're gonna be changing that.
But is there any way to control the quality of what they put out there? I mean, those are
They're just,
like a Eagle Scout
yeah.
project, and there wasn't a big budget for it. Because he's done lovely stuff at the other end of the block. I don't understand why these are there.
Right.
I mean, it's just,
Yeah, I can ask staff because there's a staff approval of those, but I'm not sure if they really look at the quality in the past on those, but
Why
they could
would
certainly
a little
change and
store like
improve
that with
that.
a counter need 12 benches?
well, he's going to the other, he's taking over the other space, the Prairie.
Oh,
He expanded to Prairie, so it's a whole thing.
Well,
But still, I mean, it still doesn't justify. I mean, we nitpick these little fonts and all that for
Yeah.
the community, and then we allow,
It looks
Now-
like there's gonna be a picnic
gonna be
celebration
a-
next weekend, and then
it's gonna be a family reunion that I used
Yeah,
to host when I was
exactly.
12, and it's not good. Truly, it's a disservice.
I think that brings up a larger issue, which is, I think we should be able to approve, or people should have to come to us to approve anything that's going on the sidewalk or outside their spaces. I mean, we do signage, but I feel like furniture, those tent signs, any weird wisteria, fake flowers.
We
or-
used to, and it just kind of fell away because stuff shows up,
Yeah. I
like the
feel
wisteria. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, now it's gone.
Yeah.
And then it's back, and then who knows? I kind of feel like if we are nitpicking little fonts and things, that something as big as like a huge display of furniture on the sidewalk after we worked so hard on that one sort of rotunda.
Yeah.
I feel like they should have to come before us if they want to do a whole furniture scape, or, I don't know, statues, or, I don't,
Where does the public right-of-way in their property, I mean, are the benches in question in the public right-of-way?
They are, yeah. So there's a permit they get from staff. We're talking about in front of Half and Half. Those are in the public right of way. So there's a permit they get from staff to have a certain number out there in the public right of way. And they have more out there now than they were approved to. So
So
they're
there's
gonna
a
be
5 or 6 foot
taking some of
bench,
them away.
a 4-foot walk,
I
and a 5
pulled
or
my
6
car
foot
up there and I
bench.
was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Like, is there a special event or what's happening?
Yeah.
So I just, 30 seconds and I was like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
But I think it should be if they can have it there and how many, but I also think it should be, what does it look like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, we
there's
used to
some
do that. That's,
consistency.
we had to pass on.
Usually the
Innovasis
proprietors want
stuff
them
a
to
long
look
time
nice.
ago.
Right.
That's my
And we
point.
never
So
really
usually
had an
that's off
issue.
the table. It's not really, shouldn't be a problem.
Exactly. I
But
know.
those look like picnic tables,
yeah.
up at Cap,
Yeah.
You can say
Wakanda up at-
Kankakee. You can say Kankakee if you want.
Yeah, to Matt's point.
And the wood
Those are the new
is
Made
even
in
like
America.
green. It's like crappy wood too. It's
It
like
is.
kind of green
It
and
is,
like.
it's just womanized wood.
No, it's gonna age awful. It's not gonna be for people in shorts, that's for sure. It's just frustrating.
It's really bad.
It just is. And I know he does better, because he does it down at the other end
We
very
think we can
nicely.
do better.
Well, Highland Park just took a different approach. They just redid all of Second Street.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of restaurants there that had their existing furniture, and they still have them. For all the other restaurants, the city went and bought all the furniture, the outdoor furniture. They picked some very nice pieces, kind of like what we did on the corner.
But do they charge them, or is that just,
No.
okay, no.
If they have, the city wants them to have outdoor venues because
Yeah.
it means
Good for business.
No, I get that. Yeah, I just wondering if they got reimbursed, but no.
Can like Bluff afford that?
No.
They can afford that. I can afford that. I can afford what he did.
You mean the wooden benches?
Yeah, I can afford the wooden benches.
Like the furniture that we approved that's on the corner, that's nice.
I know, yeah, and that's a shame that we spent all that money to do all of this new streetscape stuff that,
And
you know,
it just gets blown away.
it get blown away. It's so disrespectful. If it's not intentional.
Disrespectful.
It is.
Like it.
It is disrespectful. We work very hard for our little town. I'm very frustrated with that situation.
So what can we do? Anything?
Well, I'll talk to Drew and Clara, the staff who handle the sidewalk approvals. I know they will address the amount of them. I think for the future, we could change policy in the future and start looking at the quality of the furniture, I'm sure, but I'm not sure if they did in the past.
You know, the tables that are in the alley, whoever put them in there,
Yeah.
they're quite nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, Sarah did a nice job. She very little Parisian feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But can we tell him, can you please upgrade these, or it's not passing our
Well, it was
muster?
I don't know, I'll have to ask what we can do in that regard.
Or anybody have a chainsaw?
Yeah,
I do.
I'm gonna start carving my initials in it.
Is that legal?
No,
If I don't tell you, is it legal?
that's better.
We need you to say allegedly. and
Okay,
then
what
we're all
else have we
clear.
got here?
I don't think we have anything else.
Okay, can we think about doing a midterm thing for,
I don't really see the need for it because we've got at least 2 regular meetings before he's gonna be back at village board for the final phase. And also, for a lot of projects, if there's some little details that we wanna see revised, the village board will often approve a final ordinance with, materials, colors, little details to come back to ABR again. So we've really got the June meeting, the July meeting, and, if there's still details to resolve, they can come back after.
well, I'm just
Two.
concerned about, the logistics of what he's trying to do
Yeah.
and what Whitmer and team are trying to do, and I think it makes a lot of sense to do it at once.
Yeah, because we don't want two
We don't wanna
pours
do it
there.
twice.
Yeah,
Right, well, he's not gonna I don't think he can schedule his final approval with village board until July for what he was saying about his schedule, so I don't think we're holding him up. I think he can stick to that July schedule in village board.
Well, then we have to.
Regardless,
Then that's
right?
why I suggested the foundation permit, which is more in your ballpark. If the foundation is done and we know what the material is, it's sitting on top of it, let them do it when the Eltonian is doing it.
Yeah, I'm not, well,
And I don't know where they are in their permitting.
yeah, I don't know
Should
when
we
they're planning to
adjourn the
start.
meeting?
No one really has a realistic
Yeah.
schedule.
think you
Everyone's
have to have
schedule
the
is
design
not realistic,
figured
Well,
out.
the fire department.
It's not
maybe
Chicago.
once or maybe twice.
Well, because there's
Oh,
point
yeah.
loads and
I know,
stuff.
that's what I'm saying,
Next
yeah, I
to
mean,
me
I don't know how
four
they.
times.
Oh, yeah.
He's
okay.
he's gonna knock it down.
Not yet.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Did he pick up his permit drawings?
I know he got the demo permit a while back. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
Can we
I
adjourn?
approved his regular permit.
Can we adjourn?
Yeah, we should probably.
I move to adjourn.
Right, anybody wanna make that
I
motion?
second.
to adjourn?
Who wants to make the motion?
Make
It was
motion
done
to
already.
Adjourn.
Okay,
I second.
Second.
All right.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Were we on all that?
Adjourned. We were,
Oh, that's
yes.
bad, that's embarrassing.
Thanks, everybody.
Good one.